Top mob bosses, legends of the underworld. Organized crime has been an integral part of global history for centuries, creating some of the most powerful and feared criminal figures. Mob bosses, as heads of notorious crime families and syndicates, have wielded vast influence over cities, economies, and sometimes even governments. Their operations have ranged from drug trafficking, racketeering, and money laundering to violent enforcement of their rule. While mobsters have always lurked in the shadows, some of them rose to infamy through their brutal methods and charismatic personas. Below, we explore the lives and criminal legacies of some of the most famous mob bosses from around the world. 1. Al Capone, USA. Perhaps the most iconic mob boss of all time. Alphonse Al Capone was the leader of the Chicago outfit during the Prohibition era in the 1920s, known as Scarface. Capone built an empire on bootlegging alcohol, gambling, and prostitution. His ability to bribe officials and enforce violence ensured his dominance in Chicago's underworld. Despite his extensive criminal activities, it was tax evasion that ultimately led to his imprisonment in 1931. Capone remains a symbol of organized crime, his life immortalized in countless films, books, and pop culture references. 2. Charles Lucky Luciano, USA/Italy. Charles Lucky Luciano is credited with transforming the Italian-American mafia into a national organized crime syndicate. Born in Sicily and raised in New York, Luciano became a key figure in the mafia during the early 20th century. He is best known for founding the Commission, a governing body that coordinated the activities of various mafia families, preventing unnecessary conflicts. His forward-thinking approach allowed the mafia to thrive in the United States. Although Luciano was convicted of running a prostitution ring in 1936, he struck a deal with the U.S. government during World War II to help in the war effort, leading to his deportation to Italy in 1946. 3. Pablo Escobar, Colombia. No list of mob bosses would be complete without mentioning Pablo Escobar, the infamous Colombian drug lord who headed the Medellin cartel. Escobar's influence was unparalleled in the 1980s as he controlled the global cocaine trade, earning billions of dollars annually. Dubbed the King of Cocaine, Escobar's cartel was responsible for flooding the U.S. and other countries with cocaine, causing widespread addiction and violence. Despite his ruthless reputation, he was responsible for thousands of deaths. Escobar was also seen as a Robin Hood figure in some parts of Colombia, where he built housing and supported the poor. His reign ended in 1993 when he was killed by Colombian police forces. 4. John Gotti, USA. John Gotti, known as the Dapper Don for his flamboyant style and the Teflon Don for his ability to avoid conviction, was one of the most powerful mob bosses in the history of the American Mafia. He rose to prominence in the 1980s as the head of the Gambino crime family, one of the 5 families of New York. Gotti's willingness to flaunt his wealth and power made him a media sensation. He ran the Gambino family's operations with an iron fist, orchestrating numerous hits and engaging in extortion, loan sharking, and drug trafficking. However, Gotti's luck ran out in 1992 when he was convicted on multiple charges, including murder, thanks to the testimony of his former underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano. 5. Vito Genovese, USA/Italy. Vito Genovese was another influential mafia figure, both in the United States and Italy. He was a key member of the American Mafia during the mid-20th century and eventually became the boss of what is now known as the Genovese crime family. Genovese's influence spread across multiple industries, including narcotics, gambling, and labor racketeering. His ruthless ambition often led to violent power struggles within the mafia. Although he fled to Italy during the 1930s to escape prosecution, he continued his criminal activities abroad before eventually returning to the U.S. He was convicted of drug trafficking in 1959, but his legacy as one of the most powerful mob bosses endures. 6. Salvatore Reina, Italy. Salvatore Toto Reina, also known as The Beast was the head of the Sicilian Mafia, or Cosa Nostra, during the 1980s and 1990s. Raina's rule was marked by unprecedented violence. He ordered the murders of judges, politicians, and law enforcement officials who stood in the way of his organization's interests. The 1992 assassinations of anti-mafia magistrates Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino shocked Italy and led to an intense crackdown on Cosa Nostra. Raina was eventually captured in 1993 after years of evading the authorities. His arrest marked the beginning of the decline of Cosa Nostra's dominance, but his violent legacy remains a dark chapter in the history of organized crime. 7. El Chapo, Mexico. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, was one of the world's most powerful and dangerous drug lords. Guzman's cartel controlled much of the drug trade between Mexico and the United States, dealing in cocaine, marijuana, heroin, and methamphetamine. His ability to bribe officials and evade capture, he famously escaped from prison twice, made him a near-mythical figure in the world of organized crime. El Chapo's brutal enforcement tactics, which included the beheading of rivals, contributed to the staggering levels of violence in Mexico during his reign. Guzman was eventually recaptured in 2016 and extradited to the United States, where he was sentenced to life in prison. 8. Frank Costello, USA. Frank Costello, often referred to as the Prime Minister of the Underworld, was an influential mob boss in the United States during the mid-20th century. As a key figure in the Luciano crime family, later renamed the Genovese family, Costello focused on building political and financial connections that helped legitimize organized crime's influence. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Costello preferred bribery and corruption over violence. His control over New York's gambling operations and his connections in high places made him one of the most powerful mob bosses of his time. His reign ended in the 1950s after an assassination attempt by rival Vito Genovese, which forced him to retire. 9. Carlo Gambino, USA. Carlo Gambino, the namesake of the Gambino crime family, was one of the most influential mafia leaders in American history. Known for his quiet and calculating nature, Gambino ruled with a blend of charm and ruthlessness. He expanded the family's operations into gambling, narcotics, and loan sharking, becoming one of the wealthiest mobsters of his time. Unlike more flamboyant figures like John Gotti, Gambino preferred to keep a low profile, which helped him avoid significant legal troubles. He died of natural causes in 1976, a rarity among mob bosses of his stature. 10. Meyer Lansky, USA. Meyer Lansky, often called the mob's accountant, was a key figure in the American mafia, despite never holding the title of a mob boss himself. Lansky was instrumental in building the National Crime Syndicate alongside Lucky Luciano and Bugsy Siegel. His finance expertise allowed the mafia to launder money through various legitimate businesses, including casinos in Las Vegas and Cuba. Lansky's ability to maintain a low profile and avoid prosecution, for the most part, contributed to his longevity in the world of organized crime. He remains an iconic figure in mob history, particularly for his role in merging organized crime with legitimate business ventures. Mob bosses have shaped the criminal underworld for decades, from the Prohibition-era mafias in the U.S. to modern-day drug cartels. Figures like Al Capone, Pablo Escobar, and John Gotti remain household names, synonymous with the violence, corruption, and power struggles that come with leading a criminal empire. These men not only controlled vast resources and territories, but also wielded immense social and political influence. Their stories continue to captivate the public, offering a glimpse into a hidden world where power and money reign supreme. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Also, subscribe to our channel before you go. Thank you for watching.